Okay, so we're going to go over your Tuesday warm-up. We're in quarter 2, week 1. So it's a brand new quarter. And let's get started. So a student places 4 different substances in separate beakers. The student places each beaker on a hot plate and heats them. What substance goes through a change in state when tested in this matter? So a couple things happening here. We have 4 different substances. We don't know what they are, so we have some mystery items here. She puts them on a hot plate and adds heat. So remember, when you're looking at states of matter, often when you add heat, certain states of matter will change, or certain substances will change state. So that's what they're asking for here, is which of these substances would change state if we applied heat from a hot plate, okay? So penny is made of metal. Metals can melt if you get the temperature high enough, but they're not going to get hot enough on a classroom hot plate to be able to melt. So penny is not going to melt. A craft stick is made of wood, and it's not going to melt. An ice cube would melt on a hot plate, because it's like if you put ice cubes on the stove, and a pebble would not melt. So your answer would be ice cube. Which statement best describes the moon? So you learned about the moon, sun, earth, and moon in 3rd grade. It's also something that we'll review and build on in 5th grade. So this is a review question. So the surface is covered in water and there are many trees. So you know, or hopefully you know, that there is no water on the moon and definitely no trees. The surface is covered with craters and there are many rocks. Yes, there are plenty of rocks on the moon. And if you've ever looked at pictures of the moon, you see that there are craters because the moon does not have an atmosphere. And so it gets pounded by a lot more asteroids and objects than we do. So it has a lot more craters. And because there's no atmosphere, those craters tend to stay. It has an atmosphere made up of mostly oxygen. So you may have learned in 3rd grade, and you will learn in 5th grade, that the moon does not have an atmosphere like the Earth does. And it can support life. That's false. The only object in our solar system that can support life is Earth. So the answer would be B. Another 3rd grade review. So looking at animal ecosystems, which animal is least likely to live in a desert? So according to the chart that is describing the different animals, which one would not live in the desert? So animal A has strong legs, eats grass, and has fur. Animal B has feet that grasp, eats seeds, and has feathers. And animal C has a strong tail and fins, eats small fish, and has scales. So the animal that is so any of these animals might possibly not live in the desert, but we're looking for the one that definitely wouldn't, the one that is least likely to. So while there may not be a ton of grass in the desert, there could be desert animals that have fur and do eat grass. So that animal A could possibly live in a desert. Animal B, same thing. There are birds that live in the desert, and they would be able to forage for seeds and find some. So animal B could live in the desert. Animal C almost definitely could not live in the desert because it's obviously an aquatic animal. And you know that because it eats fish and has scales and has fins. So animal C is some sort of water ecosystem animal. And so it would definitely not live in the desert. Which material would be least useful for insulating electrical wire? So if it's not, so don't get confused here. They're not asking for an insulator. They're actually asking for something that is not a good insulator. So the opposite of an insulator is a conductor. So you're actually looking for a conductor because you want something that is not a good insulator. So copper is a conductor. It is a bad insulator, so that would work. Rubber is actually a very useful insulator, so it's not going to be a conductor. It's going to be a great insulator. Same with plastic. And cardboard is also a really good insulator, but we were not looking for insulators. We were looking for least useful as an insulator, so copper would be the answer. Which statement best describes the tool pictured below? So you have this tool here. You've seen this tool before whenever we talked about mixtures and solutions. It's got the holes in it. We use it to separate mixtures where the particles are different sizes, or we could use it to separate mixtures where there is a solid and a liquid. So let's find an answer choice that matches up with what we know. The tool is a sieve, useful for separating solutions. So the tool is a sieve. Remember, it's got a couple of names that we could call it. We could call it a strainer or a sieve, or maybe in your kitchen, you might even call it a colander. It's all the same type of object, but we don't use them to separate solutions. Remember, a solution is when something has been dissolved. And if you pour, so think like Kool-Aid. If you poured Kool-Aid through the sieve, it would not be separated. So A is not true. The tool is a magnet, useful for separating mixtures with different sized particles. So we have it flipped here. So the second part of this answer choice is true, but the first part is not. The tool is a strainer. Okay, that'll work. Useful for separating mixtures with magnetic ingredients. No. So if you have a mixture with magnetic ingredients, you need to use a magnet. A sieve will not work. This tool is a sieve, useful for separating mixtures with different sized particles. Perfect. The answer would be D.